It's been a whopping 3 years since the development of Metroid Prime 4 was handed over to Retro Studios. In that time, game journalists and obsessive fans like me have been following the company very closely to see who they've brought on to this highly anticipated project. You see, Retro Studios has spent these last 3 years hiring AAA talent from development studios responsible for the best-selling and the best-reviewed games of the past 10 years. They've even hired some talent who've worked on feature films. So now, we're going to take a look at some of these people brought on to develop Metroid Prime 4. Starting with Kyle Heffley, who was hired as Retro Studios' new lead character artist back in October 2019. He has a history of working on games such as Call of Duty Black Ops and Sleeping Dogs, but his most important work comes from 343 Industries, on Halos 4, 5, and Infinite. No doubt, this is the part of his resume that got him the job at Retro, as designing characters with suits of armor in outer space is his specialty. What's also interesting is that quite a few former members of Retro Studios went on to work at 343, so it seems we've come full circle with this hire. Speaking of full circle, Stephen Dupree was brought on as Metroid Prime 4's lead designer in January 2020, having previously worked on New Super Lucky's Tale and Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. Wait a minute, wasn't that game already made by Retro Studios? Well, yes. Dupree left Retro for 2 years to work on New Super Lucky's Tale and has since returned to work on Metroid Prime 4. This is nothing but good news, as Tropical Freeze is one of the best designed 2D platformers and video games of all time. So we're hoping Stephen Dupree can work that same magic on Metroid. Then we have Jhony Ljungstedt, who was formerly an art director at EA DICE on games like Battlefield 5 and Mirror's Edge Catalyst. Before he left to join Retro in February, he was at DICE for a whopping 12 years, and I think we can all agree that most of the games developed there have strong art direction. The Metroid Prime trilogy is known for its amazing art direction, and we think Ljungstedt has the expertise needed to make Metroid Prime 4 look its best. In conclusion, this may have been a big loss for DICE, but a big win for Retro Studios. The following month, Retro hired a new lead programmer by the name of Bharathwaj Nandakumar, whose biggest claim to fame was the Call of Duty Black Ops series. He worked on every single game, even implementing new features such as theater mode. Does this mean Metroid Prime 4 is going to have online multiplayer? Or even a theater mode? Let's slow our roll just a bit before we get into some wild speculation. Though it wouldn't be surprising if Nandakumar was put on the project for his expertise in one of the most successful online shooters of all time. Moving on, Retro Studios also hired another EA vet in May, a VFX artist named Adad Morales. He used to work at Visceral, creating the visual effects for Battlefield Hardline and the studio's cancelled Star Wars game. After the studio unfortunately shut down in 2017, he worked at Blizzard Entertainment on a cancelled StarCraft first-person shooter. In case you haven't realized, a lot of the employees on this list have extensive experience with first-person shooters, which leads us to believe that maybe Metroid Prime 4 will continue the first-person gameplay of the original trilogy. I mean, why wouldn't it? Retro Studios also hired lead VFX artist Brian Irk, who worked on Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and senior VFX artist Nicholas Wilson, who spent 12 years at Gearbox working on Borderlands. I'm definitely sensing a pattern of the first-person shooter type here. And speaking of first-person shooters, Dylan Jobe joined Retro in September as the new director of development. He's worked in the industry for 25 years on some of the most influential franchises, like Doom, Twisted Metal, Call of Duty, and most importantly, Warhawk. Yeah, remember Warhawk? Of course you do. His job as a director will mostly consist of non-creative work like creating schedules, evaluating employee performance, etc., etc. If he's been working in the game industry for as long as I have been alive, he is more than qualified for this job. Great to see he's handling another influential game series like Metroid. Retro Studios also hired someone else in September, environment designer John Marcella from Santa Monica Studios. Yes, the same Santa Monica studios that developed 2018's groundbreaking God of War. Marcella spent a decade at the company working on this ambitious sequel, as well as God of War Ascension. If his work on these games is anything to go by, then Metroid Prime 4 is going to have some incredible environments. Retro Studios has been hiring nothing but the most talented people in the industry, and that couldn't be more apparent with Marcella and this next person. That being Marissa Palumbo, as Metroid Prime 4's lead producer. She has an incredible resume, from working at Rockstar Entertainment for over 10 years on games like Grand Theft Auto 4 and 5, LA Noire, Max Payne 3, and Red Dead Redemption. All of these being the most high-caliber games of the last generation. However, as of October 2021, she has left Retro Studios to become the senior producer at Epic Games. Hopefully she's made a good impact on Retro in the year she was there. The next person Retro Studios hired was Megan Fausti, who previously worked as a game writer for Adult Swim Games on Battle Chef Brigade and Respawn Entertainment on Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. The latter is more interesting, as Jedi Fallen Order was directly influenced by Metroid Prime and its atmosphere and its Metroidvania gameplay. Fausti will likely not just serve as a writer for Prime 4's story, but also the lore players can unlock via the scan visor. Jedi Fallen Order had a great Star Wars story, so I trust Metroid Prime 4 is in good hands with her on the writing team. Next we have Martin Taramasco, a producer for the engineering department at Retro Studios. He previously worked as the senior development director at BioWare from 2013 to 2017. Given that his position at Retro is a technical one, chances are if Retro is working on multiple projects, he'll be responsible for the engineering on all of them. That's just pure speculation though. This brings us to Scott Hafner, who was hired by Retro in January 2021. He announced that he would be working as a senior level designer for Metroid Prime 4 while working remotely in California. He previously worked at Obsidian Entertainment as a senior level designer for The Outer Worlds, an RPG similar to Fallout, a franchise that Obsidian worked on with New Vegas. Metroid Prime 4 will most likely not be a text-heavy RPG, but the levels in The Outer Worlds are small, isolated areas, similar to the area-based level design of Metroid Prime. Looks like he was a good fit for this game. Also hired in January was Sam Tung, a storyboard artist who's worked on a variety of projects for Rooster Teeth, Peacock, Netflix, etc. He even worked on visual effects for movies like Iron Man 3, Maleficent, and The Jungle Book for Disney. But what you're looking at on screen right now is a Metroid animatic he uploaded to his YouTube channel in October 2020. Yeah, Sam is a big Metroid fan, so being a storyboard artist for Prime 4 must be a dream come true for him. Then in April 2021, Retro Studios brought in Chad Orr as a lighting and compositing artist, and his resume is impressive. He has game experience with 2018's God of War, but he has worked on movies like Moana, Zootopia, How to Train Your Dragon 3, Croods, and more. No doubt, Chad is an absolute Chad at what he does, and we can't wait to see what he brings to Metroid Prime 4. Hired in November 2021 was Kevin Decotoire, a freelance concept artist. Previously, he worked for Access Studios on games like New World, League of Legends, Halo Infinite, and Diablo 2 Resurrected. The concept artist's work might not appear directly in the game aside from in-game bonus pieces, but he still has a very important job getting the visual style of the game right and giving the in-game artists some reference on how to style things properly. A month later, another concept artist was hired named Andrew Faithful. He previously worked as a creature designer for Gears of War studio The Coalition and the PUBG Corporation. While he's credited as a concept artist for Metroid Prime 4, he might just bring his creature designing expertise into the mix, especially since creatures are an important part of any Metroid game. We'll just have to wait and see what he brings to the table. Finally, there is art producer Nick Todd, who has an extensive resume we couldn't possibly fit on this one screen. He started producing video content for websites like OneUp.com and IGN, quickly moving to business positions at Devolver Digital, Rooster Teeth, Special Reserve Games, and Panic Button, the last of which has worked on tons of Nintendo Switch ports. It sounds like this position is more strictly business and organization than it is creative, but clearly, Todd has the experience to be effective. And those are all the newest hires that Retro Studios brought on these past 3 years, or at least the ones that can be found via LinkedIn and social media. However, are there any more positions at Retro Studios that need to be filled? Well, if we go to careers.nintendo.com/retrostudios, there are 9 job openings as of this video. And over time, there will be other openings, as is the case for game development. So if you're qualified enough to fill these positions, go apply, get hired, and tell me all the dirty little secrets you have on Metroid Prime 4. Actually don't. Keep your job. It's important. Anyway, what do you think of the people working at Retro Studios? Let us know in the comments below, and check out the videos on the right for more topics you might be interested in. Until next time, bye.